Let's start with some Australian news. We've got a couple of Australian stories this week. So I think the one that was grabbing headlines everywhere was the Anthropic news. So there were various different quotes from Dario Amodei, who visited Australia recently, and they're talking about, this has been back and forth for a while, but this is them talking about signing an MOU to cooperate on safety research and support Australia's national AI plan, which is expected then to lead in a investment or commitment by Anthropic to either training Claude or putting on some of their workloads in Australia.
Yeah, it certainly seems like a first step in that direction. But a couple of news stories in the last couple of months, weeks about training models in Australia and will it work, and is the legislation properly optimized for these kind of workloads. But it looks like Anthropic seems to think the way through. But as you mentioned, the first kind of commitments are relatively light, but all going well, you'd expect that to grow into something larger, and you'll expect to see probably significant deployments there for these models.
Now, what this could mean for people in the sector in Australia. So if you look at the way that Anthropic has typically deployed their capacity in the United States, there's two channels. So the one is via their cloud partners, which, as you might expect, go usually through their backers, their investors. So that would be Google Cloud and in particular AWS. Either one of those companies happen to have bought a huge amount of AI capacity in Australia over the last few months, which will leave people to speculate on their own terms. So that could be one potential offtake. And the other ramp that they've used in the US would be things like their deal with FluidStack, where they have taken capacity from neoclouds or those kind of providers. And then that's been financially backstopped by usually Google in that particular case, but there are other investors as well. So yeah, plenty of ways that they could deploy. And I'm sure people involved in Australia are already having those conversations.
Yeah, something I expect we'll be reporting on in the next couple of months.
Absolutely. Very adjacent story though. So speaking of Australian neoclouds and different routes to market for these AI workloads, SHARON has signed a 1.25 billion, and this is SHARON with a company called ESDS Software Solutions, which is an Indian cloud provider who offer various different PaaS, SaaS, IaaS, and other managed cloud services, and they'll be taking up capacity. Sorry, I say taking up capacity. I'm using data center language. Of course, we're talking neoclouds here. So they will be renting a number of NVIDIA B300s deployed by SHARON, which again, we've talked about where SHARON is taking capacity from Equinix and NextDC and others in Melbourne and Sydney.
Yeah, again, this is another interesting one. Like what exactly the numbers reported translate to in terms of compute and in terms of full commitment is, we need to wait and see a bit because that the dependencies on that contract is a dependency on SHARON getting additional funding, is dependent on them receiving chips in time, et cetera, et cetera. So there's these variables there which we've learned that we need to factor in when looking at some of these deals. Yeah, it looks like another pretty good sign for the SHARON AI team.
Yeah, it looks like a big runway for them. It's interesting. So because SHARON is listed on the NASDAQ, I think what you will of some of these SPAC processes and reverse listings, but they are listed. So they do have these quarterly filings. And so apparently back in February when they listed, they had just 430 GPUs online across Australia. So these kind of deals they're signing all indicate a big ramp up from whatever capacity they're using right now.
Yeah.
One more Australia story. This is another bit of a curveball one. So the former Nxtra data center in Sydney. So this is, Digital Realty owns the site now. For those of you who have heard the name on our channel before, that's both Paul Hopkins and Jonathan Atkin referred to the Exodus story. So Exodus is one of the famous bankruptcies during the .com bubble. They built up very fast and borrowed a lot of money they couldn't necessarily afford to repay. And then their assets now live on through Digital Realty and Equinix, who bought up a lot of the space. And then this site is now being demolished and they're building a 70 megawatt facility on the site here in Sydney. This is Waterloo Road, 2325 Waterloo Road in Macquarie Park. James, this will be on your DC Byte platform.
Yeah, so I haven't actually read this story. I know the site. So what the plan is to demolish what's currently there and just basically use the power of the connectivity for something bigger.
Yeah, that's correct. So it was previously one of the sites that was leased to Fujitsu that expired in 2016. And I think it's about 4.8 megawatts was the site now. And yeah, obviously a building of that size in that sort of prime location, they reckon it can be turned into 70 megawatts. So that's according to what's on the Sears application.
It would make sense that we don't often see these demolition jobs. And like, this is not a retrofit. This is essentially a tearing down the existing facility and building a brand new one. So do you remember a couple of months ago, we reported on a similar story in Japan? So it looked like in instances where there are these sites sitting on the prime locations, especially constrained, like the North Sydney AZ. Yeah, it looks like rather than try and retrofit a legacy facility, the plan moving ahead will be just demolish it and start again.
Great opportunity, you can find them. And just a shameless plug there. So our interview on the In Conversation series will be out this Saturday with Paul and Neil Hopkins. And Neil will tell a bit more about the story of Exodus. And he actually worked through that Chapter 11 bankruptcy in California and then went on to selling some big deals that he'll talk about too. A couple of stories from Microsoft as well this week. So they have made two press releases. So this is that classic accumulating their projected spend in markets and making a rumble and getting everyone excited. But they talked about $5.5 billion in Singaporean cloud and AI infrastructure by 2029. This was from Microsoft President Brad Smith. And then $1 billion of funding in Thailand in, I think, the same time window.
Yeah, the Singapore piece is interesting. It's like, exactly are they going to be investing in? Like, obviously, as part of the previous CFA, they won allocation of capacity. So maybe if you add in all of the various elements like the development that will come, we're certainly be responsible for some of that capacity or some of that figure you mentioned. I wonder if CFA 2, whoever wins, which I think likely Microsoft will get their hand on some of that capacity in some shape or form. So yeah, as you mentioned, it could be difficult to really digest or figure out exactly what the revenue and these growth can be attributed to.
The phrasing in the Wall Street Journal was on track to invest. So I wouldn't be surprised if they've toted up what their co-location leases and the other ancillaries, upgrades, things that Microsoft will be spending in Singapore over that time period. And that's an easy headline to grab, but also a big reminder of the kind of money that these companies are spending on a month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter basis in the economy.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Like, I think sometimes you could read that and think, okay, 5.5 billion, and use the somewhat out of date $10 million a megawatt. And someone might be thinking, oh, they're going to deploy 500 megawatts. But I think, key thing is not to think that's really the case.
Yeah, absolutely. But Thailand is a bit different. So Thailand, they've committed to 2.85 billion in 2023, and then they've committed another billion over the next 2 years. And this is likely to be quite a new investment. We know that they've opened the AZ there. And, people who are plugged into Thailand will know that they have taken up capacity with a couple of popular providers in Bangkok and the EEC. And it's probably expected that they will add some AI to that.
They've got the AZ, well, I'm not yet live it up yet. They've got the various the 3 sites in various stages of development, and they will soon have that region online. But to your point, a lot of others are putting AI work out in Thailand, so be no surprise to see Microsoft join the party there, especially with True IDC, who kind of unusually last year reported that Microsoft were the anchor tenant for one of the sites.
Excellent segue, James, because True IDC have actually just broken ground on their 250 megawatt site in Thailand as well. So this is the one outside of Bangkok. It's in the EEC, which is the popular area to build at the moment for everyone, for most of the Thai workload, since downtown Bangkok is very difficult. And so Microsoft have been confirmed by True at least, and I'm sure they've done a comment directly, but they're moving into one of them. We know that they also have announced Google as a partner, so True not being shy about their hyperscale affiliations. And True IDC, just for those who don't remember, was part of an acquisition or joint venture between Global Infrastructure Partners and the SHARON AI group, which is a Thai kind of local group. And those are, so this is GIP BlackRock's kind of venture into Thailand.
Yeah, and it's pretty significant, as you mentioned. They've been quite open with who they're working with and who they're open to working with. And I think this particular site, this 250 megawatt deployment, has got a sort of a significant anchor tenant already attached to it. We won't get the details right now. But they're making good traction. I think a lot of people are seeing them as a reliable partner in Thailand.
Yeah, and they've got a new COO who started work last week. So congrats to Anand. Good job getting him in there from Yahoo. The other one,
must have been a good placement.
Yeah, for someone, I'm sure. And so this story from Japan, we'll go up to the North Asia for this one. So DigitalBridge have acquired NEC Data Centers. So NEC we talked about before. I think last time you mentioned you mentioned that they were the guys who built the airport scanners, but they do also have a nice line of data centers as well. And they have sold some of these, which is let me see, I got the location for them. It's the Kanagawa Data Center and the Kobe Data Center to a joint venture, which is DigitalBridge and JEXI, Japan Extensive Infrastructure, who are not someone I'm as familiar with as DigitalBridge.
Yeah. I had been busy on this deal for a while. It's a pretty interesting one because DigitalBridge obviously are most known for their investment in Vantage in this part of the region. They obviously do already have a presence in Japan. NEC, typically a bit of a different profile or a bit of a different footprint. It's complementary, but some other case where they've got both Yonder and Vantage kind of sitting in similar markets. So it's complementary, different type of asset. I've actually seen the specific deal as details on some of the deals, but yeah, when I first got wind of this, it kind of made sense as to what they're looking to do. I think it's a smart play by them.
Yeah, the last time I had numbers on this was when we talked about this back in 2024, and NEC were valuing the assets at $400 to $500 million. Nothing on the press release as to what the actual transaction value was, save the speculation. But yeah, this would probably mirror the DigitalBridge strategy in Malaysia, where they of course have the AIMS, or formerly the AIMS platform, which sits alongside offering a different and more kind of co-location type offering versus the Vantage hyperscale play. A couple of loan stories this week as well. Loan and investment. So BDx secured $320 million for their Indonesia data center build out. BDx, I think, often overlooked in some markets as perhaps being a small sort of co-location player, but in Indonesia, they are building quite a substantial amount of capacity out towards that sort of eastern part of Jakarta.
They've got a sizable footprint, BDx. I think they've quietly gone about building a pretty interesting platform. To your point, they do obviously have some kind of more retail focused facilities, but then, yeah, particularly in markets like Jakarta, they do have pretty sizable footprint for what would be predominantly aimed at hyperscale clients. And they do have hyperscale clients. Yeah, they're trucking along.
Yeah. And as we reported a couple of weeks back, they are rumored to be being taken to market by I Squared at the moment, with a valuation floating around the $2 billion mark. So we'll see more develops from that one. Speaking of investments, Airtel has secured a $1 billion. So Airtel is Bharti Airtel, their data center subsidiary, I should say. So it's actually Nxtra Data, which is the Bharti Airtel being one of India's top 3 cell providers or telecom carriers. And yeah, so the Nxtra platform has secured a $1 billion investment. This funding comes from Alpha Wave, who are suitably quarter zip VC sounding name, but they like some crypto as well. The Carlyle Group, who you should know, and Anchorage Capital. So Alpha Wave is actually the leading investor there with 35 million of the new investing. And then Airtel themselves are putting in just under 300 million, 290 to top up the $1 billion round. And so Airtel said they will maintain a controlling interest or controlling stake in Nxtra.
Yeah, again, an interesting one, a legacy of the telcos, I guess, that you would say. But again, they've got a couple of sizable facilities in some key markets across India. Actually toured quite a few of their facilities, and yeah, good platform. Maybe not at the scale now of some of the newer entrants in India, but yeah, pretty significant footprint in some strategic locations. And again, a bit of a variety of both kind of retail, wholesale, and then also a couple of hyperscale focused facilities.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so they're one to watch in India for sure. Nxtra, they've been making big strides. So Datacom is a kind of a veteran, like systems integrator slash IT firm, I guess would be how you describe them generally. T4 is more of a specialist data center platform. T4 said that this is part of their ongoing strategy to focus on regional infrastructure. So I think bigger infrastructure. And this was a 42 Business Parade South, which is the Highbrook Business Park. And it's up to 8 megawatts, this facility. So not a small chunk and not a small movement in the relatively lower capacity of the New Zealand market.
Yeah, that's scalable to 8, right?
Yes, I think so. Yes, that's the way it's phrased. It doesn't have that much live right now.
Yeah. Cool. I think that's everything for this week, Reese. We're recording slightly later, so we may have caught a few of the weekend stories as well in this report, but quite a busy Easter week.